MSKA and Associates, Campus and Off-Campus Interview Preparation. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most important preparation guides for MSKA and Associates campus and off-campus interviews. Brief intro. MSKA and Associates, a member firm of BDO India, is a leading audit and advisory firm delivering statutory audit, tax, and risk consulting services. Its India operations focus on assurance, compliance, and strategic advisory support for corporates across sectors, backed by strong technical expertise and global methodologies. These questions are gathered using web search and our internal database, so use them as preparation material, but also explore other topics from our channel playlist. You can check timestamps in the description to jump to any specific question. Let's begin. Explain the purpose and key requirements of SA 300, Audit Planning. Sample answer. SA 300 guides how an auditor should plan an audit so that work is efficient, risk-focused, and completed on time. I begin by understanding the client's business, setting materiality, forming the audit strategy, and defining the audit plan. Planning helps decide what to test, how much to test, and how to manage risks early. While answering, include points like understanding the entity, setting materiality, and building a risk-focused audit plan. What steps do you take to understand a client's business before starting an audit? Sample answer. I start with background reading. I review industry reports, past financials, internal controls, and management discussions. I conduct walkthroughs to understand major processes. This gives a clear picture of revenue streams, cost drivers, and risk areas. While answering, include points like reviewing industry, understanding processes, and analyzing risk areas. How do you determine materiality during audit planning? Sample answer. I determine materiality using benchmarks such as revenue, profit, or total assets. I choose the most relevant base depending on business nature. I apply a percentage and then check for qualitative factors such as fraud risk or regulatory sensitivity that may reduce materiality. While answering, include points like using benchmarks, applying judgment, and considering qualitative factors. What considerations go into selecting samples for substantive testing? Sample answer. I consider materiality, population size, risk, and the nature of the account. Higher risk areas require larger or more targeted samples. I may use random selection or judgmental sampling when specific high-value items need attention. While answering, include points like risk-based sampling, population evaluation, and judgmental selection. How would you perform risk assessment procedures for a new client? Sample answer. I study the industry, understand the control environment, perform walkthroughs, analyze preliminary analytics, and identify areas prone to misstatement. For a new client, skepticism is high because history is limited. While answering, include points like walkthroughs, analytics, and industry understanding. What is the difference between test of controls and substantive testing? Sample answer. Tests of controls check whether internal controls are designed well and operating effectively. Substantive tests verify actual numbers, such as vouching invoices or performing confirmations. Controls tell us how reliable the system is, while substantive tests tell us whether balances are correct. While answering, include points like control testing, substantive checks, and purpose difference. How do you evaluate the reliability of client-prepared audit schedules? Sample answer. I check whether schedules tie to the ledger, whether formulas work correctly, and whether the preparer has appropriate competence. I also verify key items through supporting documents. If schedules show inconsistencies, I treat them with higher skepticism. While answering, include points like checking tiebacks, testing formulas, and validating support. What steps do you take when documentation provided by the client is incomplete? Sample answer. I request missing details, check alternate supporting evidence, and escalate to seniors if gaps remain. If evidence is still incomplete, I consider the impact on opinion because incomplete documentation reduces audit assurance. While answering, include points like re-requesting documents, checking alternatives, and escalation. How do you perform bank reconciliation testing during an audit? Sample answer. I obtain bank statements, match them to the reconciliation, test outstanding checks and deposits, and check for unusual reconciling items. I also verify whether reconciling items clear in the next period. While answering, include points like matching statements, verifying reconciling items, and checking clearance. What procedures do you follow to audit cash transactions in a small business? Sample answer. I vouch cash receipts to supporting documents, verify cash payments through bills and approvals, test cash counts, and review whether controls are strong around custody. Cash is high risk, so I apply a skeptical approach. While answering, include points like vouching receipts, checking approvals, and conducting cash counts. How do you verify inventory existence for clients with manual stock records? Sample answer. I attend physical stock counts, perform test counts, reconcile to manual records, and check movement around year-end. Manual records increase the need for physical verification. While answering, include points like attending counts, reconciling records, and testing movements. What steps would you take to test inventory valuation and identify obsolete items? Sample answer. I check costing methods like FIFO or weighted average, test purchase bills, and analyze aging reports. Obsolete items are identified by slow movement, damaged stock, or outdated items requiring write-downs. While answering, include points like costing method testing, aging analysis, and checking for obsolescence. How do you audit revenue recognition for a small trading or manufacturing client? Sample answer. I verify sales invoices, goods dispatch notes, and customer acknowledgments. I review cutoff, pricing, and credit terms. For manufacturing, I also check whether revenue matches production and dispatch trends. While answering, include points like invoice vouching, dispatch verification, and testing cutoff. What procedures do you follow to test year-end cutoff for sales and purchases? Sample answer. I test transactions around year-end, check dispatch dates, goods received notes, and match them with invoice dates. The aim is to ensure revenue and expenses fall in the correct period. While answering, include points like checking dates, testing transactions around year-end, and matching documents. How do you vouch expenses to ensure they are genuine and not fictitious? Sample answer. I verify supporting bills, approvals, vendor details, and payment evidence. I also check whether the expense relates to business operations. Unusual vendors or round-figure amounts require deeper testing. While answering, include points like bills, approvals, and vendor verification. How do you audit fixed asset additions and disposals? Sample answer. I vouch purchase invoices, check capitalization criteria, verify physical existence, and ensure disposals are recorded with correct profit or loss. I also verify depreciation impact after changes. While answering, include points like invoice checking, physical verification, and disposal accounting. What are common errors you look for while checking depreciation schedules? Sample answer. I look for wrong useful lives, incorrect asset classification, math errors, and failure to adjust for additions or disposals. I also check compliance with Schedule 2. While answering, include points like useful life accuracy, math checks, and classification. What procedures do you perform to audit loans and advances to directors or related parties? Sample answer. I check board approvals, loan agreements, interest terms, and compliance with Companies Act. I also ensure disclosures are correct and repayments are tracked properly. While answering, include points like approvals, agreements, and disclosure accuracy. How do you confirm receivables and payables when external confirmations are not received? Sample answer. I use alternate procedures, such as reviewing subsequent collections, vendor statements, and reconciling ledgers. I also evaluate whether non-response indicates any risk. While answering, include points like alternate evidence, subsequent receipts, and ledger reconciliation. What steps do you take to detect window dressing or year-end manipulation? Sample answer. I analyze unusual trends, test cutoff, review manual journals, and check whether transactions close to year-end seem genuine. Pressure to meet targets often triggers manipulation. While answering, include points like trend analysis, cutoff testing, and manual journal review. Here is Part 2, questions 21 to 40 for MSKA and Associates, ICAI campus interview preparation. Written in your approved TTS-friendly teacher-style format with sample answers plus one-line key points. How do you evaluate the internal control environment in a small or medium enterprise? Sample answer. I begin by understanding the basic processes, such as sales, purchases, payroll, and cash. In SMEs, controls are often informal, so I check segregation of duties, approval mechanisms, documentation quality, and oversight by management. I identify gaps where one person controls too many steps. This helps in judging whether reliance on controls is possible or not. While answering, include points like segregation review, approval checks, and control gap identification. What procedures would you use to audit payroll in a company with manual processes? Sample answer. I verify attendance records, wage sheets, and HR approvals. I check whether rates match appointment letters, whether deductions are correct, and whether payments match bank statements. Manual payroll needs extra caution because manipulation risk is high. While answering, include points like attendance testing, wage verification, and deduction checks. How do you test the accuracy of GST input tax credit claimed by the client? Sample answer. I reconcile purchase registers with GSTR2B, verify eligibility of credits, test vendor GSTIN details, and check whether invoices meet GST rule requirements. I also confirm that credits relate to business purposes. While answering, include points like 2B reconciliation, eligibility checks, and invoice validation. What steps do you follow while auditing GST outward supplies and returns? Sample answer. I match sales registers with GSTR1, check e-way bills, verify tax rates, and ensure that revenue is recorded in the correct period. I also test whether liability is correctly deposited and reflected in GSTR3B. While answering, include points like matching returns, checking e-way bills, and validating tax liability. How do you approach an audit where major accounting is maintained in Excel rather than ERP? Sample answer. I check formula integrity, review access controls, and test whether manual entries create risks of errors. I perform more substantive testing because Excel lacks system controls. I also recommend shifting to a structured accounting system. While answering, include points like formula testing, access review, and increased substantive work. What would you do if you detect repeated related party transactions not disclosed properly? Sample answer. I gather evidence of such transactions, discuss the matter with management, and check whether they meet disclosure requirements. If management refuses to disclose, I escalate because omission affects transparency and compliance. While answering, include points like identifying transactions, evaluating disclosure needs, and escalating issues. How do you audit charitable trusts or NGO clients differently from companies? Sample answer. For NGOs, I focus on fund utilization, donor restrictions, grant conditions, and compliance with trust laws. I check whether expenses align with objectives and whether receipts are fully recorded. Tracking designated funds is critical, while answerum include points like fund tracking, donor conditions, and compliance review. How do you test provisions and accruals at year-end for expenses not yet billed? Sample answer. I examine past trends, verify contracts, and obtain estimates from management. I test subsequent payments to ensure provisions were reasonable. Under or over accruals indicate poor cutoff or manipulation, while answering include points like contract review, trend analysis, and testing subsequent payments. How do you audit investment portfolios of small family-run businesses? Sample answer. I verify DMAT statements, valuation of mutual funds, interest or dividend receipts, and classification between long-term and current. I also check whether investments match board approvals and whether any related party elements exist. While answering include points like DMAT verification, valuation testing, and classification review. What procedures do you follow to verify compliance with Companies Act requirements? Sample answer. I review statutory registers, board minutes, filings with ROC, related party approvals, and compliance with share capital rules. I ensure disclosures in financials meet Schedule 3. While answering include points like checking registers, validating approvals, and reviewing ROC filings. How do you test contingent liabilities and ongoing litigations? Sample answer. I obtain legal letters, review management assessment, check historical settlements, and analyze probability and amount involved. I ensure disclosures match the materiality of the litigation. While answering include points like legal confirmations, management evaluation, and disclosure testing. What are the key things you check while reviewing minutes of board meetings? Sample answer. I check major decisions, approvals relating to loans, investments, related party matters, and compliance issues. Minutes often reveal commitments or agreements that may affect financial reporting. While answering include points like approvals, commitments, and related party matters. How do you audit petty cash and imprest systems effectively? Sample answer. I perform surprise counts, verify vouchers, check approvals, and test whether reimbursements match actual expenses. I also evaluate whether petty cash limits are maintained and monitored. While answering include points like surprise counts, voucher testing, and limit checks. What steps would you take to verify capital work in progress where invoices are pending? Sample answer. I inspect physical progress, review project reports, and validate whether costs match work completed. I check for approval notes, contracts, and management estimates. Incomplete invoices increase reliance on physical checks. While answering, include points like physical inspection, project review, and estimate testing. How do you evaluate whether an audit finding should be classified as a qualification? Sample answer. I assess materiality, pervasiveness, and the impact on users of financial statements. If a misstatement is material and management refuses to correct it, a qualification is appropriate. If it affects multiple areas, a disclaimer or adverse opinion may be needed. While answering include points like materiality, pervasiveness, and management response. What steps do you take to maintain audit quality under tight deadlines? Sample answer. I plan work early, prioritize high-risk areas, maintain detailed checklists, and communicate continuously with the team. I avoid rushing through documentation because quality cannot be compromised. While answering, include points like planning, prioritization, and documentation discipline. How would you handle a situation where the client disagrees with your audit adjustments? Sample answer. I explain the rationale clearly, show evidence, and discuss the accounting standard involved. If disagreement continues, I escalate to partners and document the matter. Professional judgment must override pressure. While answering, include points like evidence explanation, escalation, and clear documentation. What approach do you follow to prepare working papers for a clean audit trail? Sample answer. I ensure every work paper has purpose, procedure, evidence, and conclusion. I cross-reference items, attach supporting documents, and write clear reviewer notes. A clean audit trail helps future teams understand the logic. While answering, include points like purpose, procedure, evidence structure, cross-referencing, and clarity. How do you ensure professional skepticism while auditing small organizations with weak documentation? Sample answer. I question unusual transactions, cross-check information from multiple sources, and rely more on substantive procedures. I stay alert to bias because weak documentation increases risk of misstatement or concealment. While answering, include points like questioning mindset, alternate checks, and increased substantive testing. How do you communicate audit findings to clients in a clear and professional manner? Sample answer. I summarize findings, explain impact, link them to standards, and offer practical recommendations. I maintain a respectful tone and ensure clients understand the importance of corrective actions. Clarity encourages cooperation. While answering, include points like summarizing findings, explaining impact, and offering recommendations. Thank you for watching, and if you liked our video, kindly press the like button and leave us a comment. This will help us reach a wider audience. Don't forget to check the playlist for more great learning.